a theory that a lot of us fell into tendering because we were never going to make it in competitive sport. And actually, we all want to win a medal. And so instead we go out and win projects. And that's why, instead of calling our drafting and review process stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, we've gone and called it bronze, silver, and gold. It's the Olympiad of review processes. But I often reflect on whether it is used well, whether we're really deserving of those medals that we get as we go along the process. So I want to reflect on the bronze, silver, gold drafting and review process in 3 different timeframes. The first time frame would be in a 16 to 18 week bid. My suggestions on that is that you don't expect a bronze review earlier than week 7 or 8. Why? Because the likelihood over a bid over 16 to 32 weeks even is that there's not going to be enough solution development yet to put pen to paper. That expecting your technical subject matter experts to actually write down their solution is unrealistic because they don't have one yet. So my recommendation always on bids longer than 16 weeks is weeks 7 to 9. That's when you have a bronze. And you expect 30% maximum of the content of the bid. But what you expect to be there almost in full is a structure around how you might present the information. Some people call it a storyboard. I don't think there's much story at bronze yet, but I do think there's a structure that you can put in place for compliance. So on those big bids, weeks 7 to 9, think about that as your bronze. It's low expectation of technical solution, high expectation of structure, and maybe a little bit of messaging or a little bit of where the strategy fits in, but not much more. Then when you step into silver review, you're looking at about 8 weeks out from submission, which means that you're giving people the time between that 30% bronze and that 70% silver to fully develop that solution, to work with their tender writers, if they have them, bid coordinators, bid managers, submission managers, to actually craft the narrative around the solution. And as the solution evolves, the communication of that solution also evolves. So by the time you get to silver, 70% in a long bid, you really should be able to achieve a lot of narrative about the solution that is feature heavy. So it will tell you a lot about what you as the proponent is going to deliver for the customer. Then let's turn to gold. Gold would be 2 to 4 weeks after silver in that sort of longer tender time frame. And what are our expectations of gold then? We're talking 95% done. So it's structured. All the questions are answered properly. The graphics are in there in sort of 96% style. You know exactly what your solution is and you've refined it and communicated it better from silver to gold. But what really needs to come out at that gold review is benefit. At bronze, you're seeking an understanding of what the client wants. You're trying to get that understanding down on paper. You're trying to structure it in a way that you can communicate your solution. At silver, you're 70% of the way there on solution, and you are communicating features of it. By gold, you're presenting the solution in a visual, creative form. You're communicating it more succinctly. But what's most important is that at gold, you are honed in on the benefit of each and every element of your solution to the client. Let's look at a shorter time frame. Let's look at a 9-week time frame. You can still go through each of the bronze, silver, and gold processes in a 9-week time frame quite comfortably. Again, think to yourself, will we have a solution at bronze? Probably not. You can see the recurring theme here. Lower your expectations of how in-depth a solution you're going to get at bronze, and instead focus on high expectations on compliance and structure at bronze. But give them 4 weeks of that 9-week period to come up with something to put on paper. And then your period between 4 weeks and 9 weeks, obviously you're going to have a shorter silver and a shorter gold process. But the application is the same. It's understanding, it's well-articulated solution with gaps and question marks, and then it's well presented, creatively communicated, and benefit-laden gold. The issue I have is when you come to the 2 to 4 week and even 6 week tenders, and I think too many submission managers expect to have a bronze process. My answer to those submission managers is you're not being flexible enough. Any drafting and review process needs to adapt to the time frame and needs to adapt to the dynamic of a bid. So my recommendations for those 2, 4, 6 week bids is you do bronze. As a submission manager, you give yourself a bronze drafting and review process. You make sure that you've blueprinted the documents in Word or InDesign. You make sure that you understand what compliant looks like and what non-compliant looks like, and you're starting to communicate that to your subject matter experts. You put down dot points of what you think should go into the document, but don't expect that those people working on the solution are going to be able to, in a 2 to 4 week period, to give you a documented bronze. But you can create that documented bronze. You can fulfill that process. You can be proactive and be the one that does that and put the onus on yourself. Then high expectations at silver, higher expectations at gold. And I think actually then you'll be less frustrated as well, because I think the bronze, silver, gold drafting and review process is most frustrating when people ignore the bronze because they don't have time to look at it. So again, just to reiterate, my tips on the longer ones are push bronze further out to allow people to actually develop the solution so they have something to say. And honestly, my recommendation on the shorter ones is to do bronze yourself, and it sits there and you feel comfortable that the document is being developed, but don't make it a formal part of the drafting and review process. So I hope this chat helps you reflect a little bit about your application of the bronze, silver, gold drafting and review process, and the fact that it needs to adapt to its context, but also the fact that you might need to be just that little bit more proactive within it. And when it comes to the medals and the medal tally, there's no doubt in my mind that if you put the right drafting and review process together, you might end up on the podium.